looks good. Right, good. Then we have Alfonso and Cuesta with us from the Universidad Unidad, and yeah, we will hand over to him and stick to the post-classical period. This is going on for me today. Right, over to you. Matthew's just adjusting, so they can actually see a bit taller for our setup.
It's a good video. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this colloquium for this opportunity to share our work and all the attendants to this communication. Today, I'm going to be talking about ancient Greece superverb construction in diachrony. What I believe is innovative about my approach to the topic is the incorporation of historical sociolinguistics, something I find out of the utmost importance in the history of post-classical Greek. So to summarize, I'm quickly going to introduce to you my understanding of the concept of SVZ, superverb constructions in advance, which follows closely that of the Spanish research group led by Baños and Jiménez López with my teammate Lucía Madrigal. We'll speak later. Secondly, I'll go briefly over the corpus I've compiled for my survey, SVC with nouns of movement, full realizative construction, and separately, the most frequent SVC, prototypical SVC within my corpus. Lastly, I will introduce to you some final remarks and I will sum up my conclusions. So, what's in the superverb constructions definition? Although there are various definitions and many theoretical problems, we propose the following lato sensu definition of SVC as a specific and minimally grammaticalized type of collocation. As can be seen on the screen, SVC are a semi-compositional structure consisting of a transparent, even or predicative noun, it's not the same, independence on a semantically reduced verb adapted to the construction which constitute multi-word periphrases or phrases equivalent to the simple verb. To make decision, to give reasons, plum poiumai, pleo, taxim poiumai, tatto. In this regard, collocation are restricted word combinations which are found in between compositional phrases such as to take a match, pontem facere, or eimata poieo, and phraseological units such as to pull somebody legs, ludos facere, or useful fixed expression as glauxeis Athenas. SVC such as to take a picture, finem facere, or iedenem poiumai, are collocation where a predicative noun takes a light verb with a very unspecific meaning in order to organize its predicative frame in this predicate. Now, this definition might be taken more or less strictly. It's a prototypical continuum. What we consider prototypical SVC as observed by Jiménez López in her seminal 2016 paper, the application of criteria commonly used to characterize SVC cross-linguistically have also proved relevant in the analysis of ancient Greek SVCs, mainly the equivalence to a simple verb, the reduction of SVC to non-phrases, the co-referentiality of the subject of the verb and the first argument of the predicative noun, noun variability, ambiguity, referential ambiguity, allow us to characterize constructing like strategian, noumagien, or mixing poiesis type as functional or prototypical or basic SVCs. With regard to the typology of main uses of SVC, there are also different types, which I consider to be less prototypical SVCs. In this collocation, the verb conveys a meaning that is somehow related to its original meaning, plain, full meaning. This verb is what some scholars have called extension of superverb or light verb. This verb is what convey an spectral or dietetic meaning. For example, they can give spectral, inquative, durative, infinitive, terminative, or dietetic, active, passive, interrogative, anticausative, causative information. The special relation entry between the subcategories in noun and the support verb determines the nature of SVC extension verb. As the example show, the internal predicative structure and action type of nouns such as battle, attack, bellum are crucial for defining a given collocation as support verb or light verb extension, either spectral or dietetic in grammatical terms. For example, in contrast to bellungere, which is the most general in Latin example, SVG with this predicative noun or function verb nominal collocation specifically indicate an ingressive aspect in bellum suscipere or a terminative aspect in bellum conficere. What I found quite interesting is that some scholars, for example, Bauer, have pointed out that SVG never reached a full grammaticalization stage. Given this controversial behavior in the formal renewal of constructions, we have studied the development of SVG from different theoretical approaches, one of which is sociolinguistic. It's a fact that SVG can almost never be translated literally into another language. For example, attention is paid in English, learned in Spanish, made in French, gifted in German, and given in some standard modern Greek. This variation can also occur within the same language. For example, to take a stroll and to take a walk mean the same thing and are a clear case of linguistic variation. This is a type of variation, I don't put the name of this kind of variation, that we are going to study in this presentation. But in addition, we're going to look at how these changes can be related to what the Byzantines have called levels of speech. To my knowledge, the most comprehensive theoretical introduction to the treatment to date of SVG is Pompei et Aliae for BJ next October is the publication on which the extensive chart on the screen is based. In the German tradition, the term Funktionsverb was introduced by Pollens. In the French tradition, on the other hand, the notion of verbal support verb, originated as a development of the concept of operator, introduced by Harry in the Lexique Gourmet under the direction of Maurice Gross. This model also developed the notion of light verb extension, a verb which is less semantically empty and which can replace our verbs by adding different sets of meaning, mainly aspectual values, to the whole construction. According to all these perspectives, the verb of SVG only actualized the predicative noun, an approach that not considered the light verb as a term under the set of complex predicate and as a construction in which two semantically predicative elements jointly determine the structure of a single syntactic clause. On a part of our project, named Dicogra Research Team, the proposal I'm going to apply to the corpus is theoretically eclectic, although it's dominated by the theoretical postulate of lexical functional theory. Our project is with the name in Spanish, Interaction between Lexicon and Syntax in Ancient Greek and Latin, is the database. Dicogra, abbreviation, Dictionary of Ancient Greek Collocation, is an online dictionary, non-open yet, that systematically collects and describes in detail verb nominal collocation of the type polemon poiestai, dicendidonai, diapollei, crastai, oies, aporian, piptein, of ancient Greek in a wide corpus of authors and works from the Homeric epic to post-classical Greek, the 3rd century AD. The dictionary provides an exhaustive morphological, syntactic, and combinatorial analysis of each collocation, as well as real examples of usage, with translation into English, frequency of use, cognitive metaphors, and diachronic evolution. Dicogra is the result, the product of the research team before presenting. From a syntactic point of view, as we can see from this syntactic tree, double parsing or analysis is one of the inherent features of support verbs. In a prototypical SVG, its complements, such as the completive of host and the coordinated phrase in 6b, next please, can be analyzed in two ways, as dependent on the noun, as an adnominal complement, on the whole collocation, excuse me, as if it were a complex predicate equivalent to a simple verb. In neither case, it dependent on the support verb itself. The converse construction, which saw various syntactic nodes corroborate the syntactic analysis, the opposition between logon didomi kaidehome with two nodes is a partially grammaticalization diathetical extension with those with both verbs didomi and dehome. The exercise, okay, the first one, is in the first part of the text. I not cut off correctly. From a methodological angle, there are two key concepts on which our research is based. One is the light bearer, and the other is the collocational pattern, orbit, range, represented by the combination of base plus light bearer. Light bearers, unlike auxiliary bearers, are very common lexical items in languages that have subtle semantic difference in terms of combinatory possibilities with main bearers. So they are restricted in their collocational patterns. Some examples from classical Attic. On the screen, you can see some of the most frequent SVC with verbs that have a high frequency of use in the whole TLG corpus. The collocational pattern, in turn, is made up of the number of predicative nouns that typically appear in combination with a given light bearer and have a limited co-occurrence that make this susceptible to forming a syntagmatic and phraseological unit. The predicative noun can take on different semantic roles with actions acting. Thus, the COGRA researchers has collected the whole set of nouns that appear with the prototypical collocative poieo in Herodotus. The relative frequency of use of each of the bases in combination with the light bearer is a decisive factor in determining the idiosyncratic stability of the construction in the time. SVC promote an enormous range of combinatorial variability through the metaphorical translation that result from collocation of the base with the collocative. Study of collocational form with specific noun, mahe, polemos. Indeed, yesterday, the difference between them explained Professor Pompey yesterday, has revealed that this collocation line metaphorical patterns would make it possible to conceptualize the onset of an event by means of concrete notions related to the embodied experience of reality. The analysis of these metaphors allows to establish patterns in the time of collocate to be expected in a spectral or diathetical collocations, which may in turn help reduce the degree of unpredictability of these formations. Using the example of frequent nouns, polemos and mahe, for instance, we observe here and below the semantic productivity of this construction in classical Greek and our corpus. Some of the most important conceptual metaphors resulting from this combination are presented in the following card. As we will have occasion to see when we study the diachrony, a considerable number of these metaphorical combinations remain unchanged in later stages of classical Greek. The difference between a prototypical SVZ with a pure light verb like poiume and the SVZ super verb extension construction promoted by the semi-lexicalized verb titemi in example number 7 is transparent in this respect. The difference between the prototypicality, the 10 machen poiestai, and the nuances apported for the lexical base titemi is clear, obviously, in examples 7b and 7, especially 7b, and with the athetical extension in 7c with the verb histamai. The template shown on the screen aims to summarize the descriptive possibilities that a collocational pattern of, just in the case the two nouns, mahe and polemos, can present in green, including the SVC and all the variety of functional extension that pivot around this basis. One of the aims of the DCROGRA project is to describe the collocational patterns of as many lexical domains as possible, both synchronously and diachronically. At this point, we have, in advance, prepared two questions that will guide our work. How to explain the diachronic variation of this type of construction in a corpus of post-classical Greek, in relation with the before question, is the variation in SVC in post-classical Greek best explained in terms of lexicalization, grammaticalization, or some other process of change? This is a mystery. Next slide, please. Next. Corpus. Regarding the elaboration of our corpus, not easy, we have worked with the selection criteria that you see on the screen, philological criteria, and with the aim of studying the variation between versions of the same hagiographic text in its diachronic evolution. The sample of the data we have collected includes New Testament for the rewriting of these canonical texts and hagiographical texts from several periods, from 1st to the 14th century to finish the Byzantine Empire, which we have divided into 4 groups according to the history of this literature genre. The New Testament is representative of a low koine, a low register koine, level of speech, popular, that was in contact with the surrounding Semitic language with phenomena, linguistic contact, called switching, another. The second group of texts are some of the first hagiographical texts, texts up to the 9th century, also writing in a low koine. The next group of texts are metaphrases, very important in our research, of the previous texts. Namely, stylistic rewritings of these literary materials in order to raise them to a higher linguistic level of or lower. In the terms of Byzantine diglossia, for some scholar triglossia, hagiography encompasses the entire literary spectrum of post-classical Greek literature, making it a key literary genre for the study of grammatical change and all kinds of diachronic variability. This tendency is highlighted in the so-called metaphrastic rewriting of hagiographical texts, especially in this period. Sorry. Next slide. The following figure shows the distribution of Euchem Poyeo. The following, this is metaphrases. Yes. In particular, research on all the work of Simeon Metaphrastes, who lived in the 10th century and marked a stylistic turning point in this type of literature. After his Menologion, a calendaric liturgical text with the life of the saints, most hagiographical literature was written in a high koine like this, for first time in the history of the genre. In order to understand the functioning of the diachronic chain in classical Greek, it is necessary to be very clear about the technical use of the polysemic term metaphrasis by the Byzantines. As can be seen, it's important to bear in mind that the rewriting is understood as a genuine intralinguistic translation, which explains the selection of the innovative lexical material used in the new versions. It is at this point that the SVC can play an important role as a marker of the change in level of speech. This is the main, in the polysemy of the term metaphrasis. Translation is one of the values. Synchronic trilingual translation is a key word for our research. Metaphrasis with this equivalence. Well, the following figure shows the distribution of Euchem Poyeo by morphological voice and chronological period, the most frequent item. The analysis of the data makes an explanation in terms of pure grammaticalization very complicated. Euchem Poyeo is used more, Poyeo, not Poiumai, is used more frequently in the hagiographical test of the first stage, while this genre prefers an low koine. After the standard rewriting of the genre by Simeon Metaphrastes, 10th century, remember, writers seem to have become reluctant to use it, and its appearance in the corpus declines considerably. Examples in this slide. Examples, Poiesas Euchem, Epoiesen Euchem, sempre in active voice, but in the corpus, Vita Stephanus Junioris, we have an example of classical prototypical with middle voice fixed expression of subverb reconstruction, Euchem Poiesomet. The same in classical literature. Testimonies. To begin the analysis, we will start with a productive set of SVC with movement or motion nouns such as poreian, apoplum, epanodon. All the nouns in the list take part of prototypical SVC except ekbasis to escape. For example, Poiumai poreian is a perfect equivalent to porewo. The same happens with poieo poreiam in the active voice, which is rather surprising. By the way, species with the active poieo are for the most part an innovation of post-classical Greek, in which the voice system shifted from one with a middle distinction to another with only an active and passive voice. It's a very difficult question. However, not all SVC with poieo are prototypical SVCs. In some cases, the verb behaves as a light verb extension that combines accusative meanings, such as poieo ekbasin in the example 10z. Ala poiesei sun toi peiras moi kai ten ekbasin tu dinas toi pennenkei ten ekbasin poiesei. This is a clear example. In all these nouns, there are only two instances of the active poieo, one of which is justified by the causative meaning of the sentence. Therefore, this group of nouns is quite stable in terms of voice differentiation. As can be seen in the following figure, most of the occurrence of poieo plus movement noun in the corpus are in the middle voice, and the only two occurrences with the active poieo appear in the first two periods of the corpus. In contrast, the majority of occurrences, and all of them with poiumai, middle voice, appear in the Comenian and late Byzantine periods. In this regard, it's also very relevant to note that these texts follow several trends directly related to the diachronic variation of these complements. The smaller a collocational pattern becomes, the stronger the collocation becomes, and complementally, the more an element is used and to more context it is supposed to apply, the greater the probability that new SVC are added to the picture. In this case, we discuss some construction which, although they cannot be considered prototypical SVC, do not allow us to interpret poieo as a full verb either. This verb, like support verb, have certain combinatorial restrictions, but they have a fundamental difference within them. While a support verb may report the existence of the action denoted by the noun in certain spatio-temporal condition, a realitative verb indicates that the purpose for which the action exists has been achieved. For example, when an order is given, the order comes into existence in the real world. The noun must have a concrete semantic content. It must refer to something with a goal that can and must be achieved. So it will often refer to a telic action. Not every noun has this value. Unlike a promise, a work cannot be fulfilled, performed, or undertaken. A work has no purpose beyond its existence, so it can be combined with a support verb to give, but not with realizative or fulfillment verbs. Well, the stability and lack of formal innovation in the use and function of SVG in post-classical Greek, especially those with a spectral or dietetic function, can be seen in the fact that most of the conceptual metaphors have already appeared in classical times, in this scheme is a summary, remain practically unchanged in texts of different registers, high, medium, low. Let us look at some of these cases by incorporating classical Attic uses with their exact parallels in hagiographical literature. Classical Greek in our database and hagiographical courses, my own propon our own corpus. Is the same, only we can see a change in the through synonymy some terms, some voices. Diegema logos is some small change, but only a lexical level. Okay? The construction full is the same. Second, to begin is to tell, is to take. The extension is the with the bare haptomai. Haptomai, it remains in hagiographical corpus in a post-classical, post-Byzantine or later Byzantine example. Another one, begin to begin is together, the same synaptoi, the same cognitive metaphor with a spectral value. And the last, even sharp places that the start of a negative situation a fall, and pipto, and FSC is noson is a prototypical example, and the delomenon, polemon, and FS with a lexical change, but the same construct. None of the above could be understood without taking into account the diglossic or triglossic sociolinguistic situation of post-classical Greek. In fact, in order to define level of speech, we must first speak of Greek diglossia. Diglossia, as seen on the following models, is the linguistic situation in which a speech community uses two different languages for different purposes of communication: formal, informal, official, popular, vulgar. What is special about Greek is that this diglossia is integrated not by two different languages, but by two different historical stages of the same language. In the case of classical Greek, the Greek spoken up to the time of Alexander the Great was considered a pure language that deserved to be preserved as a high language. On the other hand, the vernacular Greek that was developed naturally from the Hellenistic Koine was considered inferior to classical Greek and is therefore conventionally called low. Despite the lack of a human terminology to define them, we usually speak of Atticus Greek and Byzantine Koine, Hellenica, for the written variants, and of Demotiki, of Bulgar Greek for the spoken Regesta, which entered the written record mostly after the 12th century. But that is another question. Some of the clearest analysis of this Byzantine diglossia use the bare concept of style instead of the sociolinguistic concept of sociolect or the diastratic variant, based on the basic linguistic classification established by the seminar work of Tsiliakus, which laid the foundation for the linguistic characterization of the different linguistic levels of speech in the hierarchical corpus. We propose to apply some new linguistic tools to this card. In particular, I have observed that the so-called SVC is an important criterion in distinguishing linguistic levels. In a few words, the ability of the metaphrasta, remember the definition of the rewriting in Byzantine terms, the metaphrasta to construct and coin innovative turns of phrase by rejecting construction based on verbs of very general semantics, such as poieo, didomi, or pero, is astonishing and can explain the rich diversity of their phraseological rewriting procedures. Let's move on to the examples in the picture. This is very important contrasted point of view, because the ancient version of our hagiographical test give a simple verb substitution verb periphrastic on even super reconstruction prototypical in the rewriting process of Simeon metaphrastes in 10th century for the monologion. This is the direction and syntactic analytic process, like another processes of post-classical Greek syntax. But we have the opposite side direction. The new version remain arcanes, remain innovation, but the antecedent form is in the defective root verb erphomai in the bit antiquator. High-low is the next direction. And other prototypical case, poiesas eugen, with the plain verb, with the lexical plain verb proseu homai, proseu sato, in the metaphrastic version. We can verify the applicability of this theoretical hypothesis by moving to the suffer ground of analyzing the corpus data. In these examples, before of metaphrastic rewriting, there is a general tendency to make deliberate substitutions of a synthetic form for an analytic one, a train chain through post-classical Greek. This type of chain, consisting in the replacement of a verb by another collocation, multi-word collocation, is indicative of the author's conscious use of these words to operate a deliberate upward or downward change of level of register in the text, in the literary text, as is in the case when the canonical SVG are kept unchanged in the older version of the Vitae. In the light of this data, rather than a process of pure grammaticalization or lexicalization, and without entirely denying that these processes are partly at work, I believe I have come to the conclusion that SVG or SVZE and other close verb nominal collocation, at least in our corpus, operate in a similar way to intralinguistic translation, a procedural very typical of again in Byzantine literature. For this reason, it's no coincidence, this is only an example, there is a considerable overlap between metaphrasis and glossographical, technical, post-classical works. Indeed, the metaphrastic author, like the glossographer, resort to partial synonymic equivalence by introducing rare or already disused lexical items of high registers, as is the case with the classical obscurius per obscuriora apoptengomai, for example, vocabulary, which the author often used to replace the standardized and generic eponymic term lego in our corpus. Metaphrastic multiplying several examples from the ancient sources. With this, I have almost come to the end of my presentation. In closing, I would like to offer a brief summary and some partial conclusions. SVC formed an heterogeneous group of semi-productive complex expressions in ancient Greek. These multi-word lexical items can move into different registers, either up or down, like any other lexical items. Lexicalization process more probably happens here. A large part of the SVC existing in the classical period remains stable from a formal and syntactic point of view in the text classified at the highest levels of language, atithemes or even high koine. Diachronically, perhaps except for cases of incorporation, as logopoieo or language contact cases, living on a part, SVC do not undergo formal renewal processes typical of grammaticalization, but are the result of innovation typical of rewriting mechanisms in the sense of an internal translation in the lexical domain. The procedure for replacing and creating new collocations are similar, as we've seen, to those used in glossographic variation. Within the corpus, the emergence of new verb nominal collocation is particularly noticeable in the metaphrastic rewriting of all the lives from Simeon the Metaphrastic Menologium. Although the evidence is sufficient for this partial conclusion, it will be confirmed by further research. I will become your question and critical remarks on my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I give back with to a superb construction in the ancient Greek.